The alien ship floated quietly above the blue planet, surrounded by clouds that glowed under the sunlight. Commander Sale stood near the observation window, watching Earth below. She was from the Valari, a peaceful race known for knowledge and kindness. The mission was simple, to study this human world that once burned itself in war. But as her team scanned the surface, something strange appeared on the radar. It was a heartbeat, weak but steady. A living human among the ruins. They sent a small shuttle down to the ground. Dust rose as the ship landed on cracked streets filled with silence. Buildings stood like ghosts of the past, broken but still standing. In the middle of it all, they found a man lying near an old vehicle. His clothes were torn, his body covered in dried blood, yet his eyes moved faintly under his closed lids. One of the medics whispered, "Impossible. He should not be alive." They carried him carefully onto the ship. Commander Sale ordered, "Keep him stable. We need to understand how he survived." The human's name was Mason Cole, found written on a metal tag around his neck. His pulse was strong but erratic, and every few minutes his body shivered as if trying to wake up. Inside the medical bay, soft blue lights surrounded Mason as Valari technology scanned him. His lungs had been crushed, his skin burned, and his ribs cracked. No creature could live through this without deep medical help. Yet Mason's heart kept beating. When Sale looked at the monitor, she noticed something. His damaged tissue was growing again. Slowly, piece by piece, his body was repairing itself. The medics were confused. "We gave him no medicine," one said. "No healing rays, yet the cells are regenerating on their own." Commander Sale leaned closer to the screen. She could see how the cells multiplied faster whenever Mason's brain showed signs of strong emotion. His neural waves spiked each time his muscles tensed. It was as if his body responded to his thoughts. "He's fighting," she said softly. "Not to live, but to refuse death." After several hours, Mason opened his eyes. His vision was blurry, and the strange shapes around him made no sense. He saw soft, green-skinned beings with wide silver eyes staring at him. His voice cracked. "Where am I?" "You are safe," Sile answered calmly. "We are not here to harm you. You were found injured. We only want to understand how you survived." Mason looked around, confused but alert. "You're not human," he whispered. Sale nodded. "We are the Valari. Our people came to observe your world. But you, human, your body, it defies science." Mason tried to sit up but groaned in pain. He looked down at his arm where deep scars were fading before his eyes. "Guess I got lucky," he muttered. "No," said one medic softly. "This is not luck. Your body is rebuilding itself at a rate we cannot explain." Sile stepped forward. "Tell me, Mason Cole, what drives you to survive? How do you do this?" He stared at her for a long time. His eyes were tired but burning with emotion. "Because I don't quit," he said finally. "I don't care how bad it gets. I don't stop fighting." The aliens didn't understand. They thought survival required peace and calm, not anger. Sale observed his brainwaves again. Every time Mason remembered the battle, his healing accelerated. His anger, his frustration, it was making him stronger. That night, when everyone else rested, Sile stayed in the lab, replaying the recordings. Mason's pulse rose when his memories turned painful. The more he remembered his loss, the faster his wounds healed. Sale whispered to herself, "He heals through emotion, through defiance." The next day, Mason tried to walk. His legs trembled, but he refused to lie down. "You don't have to move," Sile said gently. He gave a faint grin. "If I can stand, I will. Lying down feels like losing." Sile admired his determination. She could not understand the human spirit, but she could feel its power. To the Valari, healing was a calm process guided by harmony and rest. But this human healed through conflict. He didn't want to be comforted. He wanted to overcome. Later, while Sile was recording her report, Mason asked to see the damage outside. They took him to the observation deck. He looked down at Earth, broken cities below, and whispered, "We did this to ourselves. But we're still here." Sael studied his face. It wasn't sadness she saw. It was something deeper, something burning quietly. "Your people are strange," she said. "You destroy yourselves, yet you always rebuild." Mason nodded. "That's what we do. We fall, but we don't stay down. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's anger. Doesn't matter. We always get up." Sael wrote in her notes later that day, "Human healing is not about recovery. It is an act of defiance. Their cells react to strong emotion, especially anger or pain. They don't rest to survive, they fight to survive. Perhaps this is why they endure when others would give up." As days passed, Mason's body continued to surprise them. His bones realigned faster than any known species. His burns disappeared, leaving smooth skin behind. But every time he looked at his reflection, there was no relief, only determination. He spoke softly to himself, as if to the universe. "You can break me, but I'll still come back." The Valari crew began to feel both admiration and unease. One young medic asked Sael, "Commander, do all humans heal like this?" Sael replied, "I don't know. But if they do, then the galaxy may not be ready for them." That night, Mason dreamed of his past. He saw the battlefield, his friends, the smoke and light. He felt anger rising again, but this time it didn't hurt. It gave him strength. When he woke, he could move without pain. His wounds were gone. Sael stood beside his bed, recording new data. "You're completely healed," she said in disbelief. Mason smiled faintly. "Good. Now I can help someone else." "Help?" she asked. "You should rest." He shook his head. "I can rest later. Right now, I need to make sure no one else falls like we did." Sael wrote her final note for that day. The human Mason Cole survived wounds beyond logic. His secret lies not in medicine but emotion. He does not heal because he wishes to live. He heals because he refuses to die. It is not survival. It is defiance made flesh. And for the first time, Commander Sael felt something she never expected, a quiet respect for the strange, fierce creature she had rescued. She began to wonder what would happen if more humans were found. If all of them could rise from the ashes through anger and will, then perhaps, she thought, humanity was never truly defeated. They were only waiting for the right reason to stand again. Would you like me to continue and write part 2, 1,000 words next, in the same simple English and emotional third-person style? Commander Sael walked through the quiet halls of the Valari ship, deep in thought. It had been 7 days since Mason Cole had awakened. Every new test brought more questions instead of answers. The Valari were proud of their knowledge of life, yet this one human had shown them something beyond science. His recovery was not gentle or peaceful. It was wild, emotional, and filled with a strange energy they called spite. Inside the medical lab, the soft hum of scanners filled the air. Mason sat on a silver table while the medics prepared more instruments. His expression showed both annoyance and curiosity. "You people really enjoy studying me, huh?" he said, half smiling. Sael answered honestly, "You are the most unique patient we have ever seen. We wish to understand how your body heals." Mason shrugged. "I don't even understand it myself. I just keep going." The head medic, Talon, looked at Sael. "Commander, every time his emotions change, his cells react differently. When he is calm, the regeneration slows. But when he grows tense or angry, it increases rapidly. Look." On the monitor, Mason's tissue growth changed with his heartbeat. Calm meant slow repair. But when he clenched his fists and thought about his lost friends, the healing sped up again. Sael frowned, amazed. "It's like his body listens to his feelings." Mason laughed a little. "Yeah, maybe it does. I guess anger's good for something after all." Sael wanted to understand more. She asked, "Why does anger make you stronger, Mason?" He looked at the floor before answering. "Because anger reminds me that I care. When something hurts or someone's lost, it wakes something inside me. It makes me want to push harder." The aliens exchanged confused glances. To them, anger was dangerous and unhealthy. But this human spoke of it as fuel, not poison. Later, Sale gathered her scientists for a discussion. Our data shows human biology reacts directly to emotional pressure. Their bodies use pain and stress to rebuild. It is almost as if they grow stronger the more they suffer. Talon tilted his head. But that is not logical. No species can heal through anger. Emotions should damage, not repair. Sale looked at the images of Mason's recovering body. And yet look at him. Logic is not enough to understand this race. While they spoke, Mason stood by the observation window, staring out into the stars. He thought of home, the earth he once knew. He remembered laughter, family, and the people he fought beside. They were gone now, but their faces stayed in his memory like fire. He whispered quietly, "You didn't die for nothing." Sale watched him from behind the glass. She noticed the way his muscles tensed when he remembered pain. It was almost as if memory itself called life back into him. His scars faded faster after those moments. To test the theory, Sale designed an experiment. They created an environment of simulated stress using light, sound, and memory projections. "Mason," she said gently, "we want to see if your healing changes under emotional strain. We will not harm you. Only show you memories." Mason nodded slowly. "If it helps you understand, I'll do it." As the simulation began, holographic images surrounded him. The ruins of a battlefield, the sound of thunder, and voices echoing in the distance. His breathing quickened. The machines around him detected a sudden rise in cellular activity. The damaged tissues they had marked earlier began to close. Sel whispered to her team, "Look at this. His healing speed just tripled. He is responding to emotion." Mason gritted his teeth and whispered to himself, "Not again. I won't fall again." When the test ended, he sat down, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Guess I passed." Sile nodded in awe. "You did more than pass, Mason. You've shown us that human strength does not come from peace. It comes from resistance." He laughed quietly. "We don't like giving up, even when we should." That evening, Sale wrote her personal notes in the ship's log. Humans carry emotion as part of their biology. Their bodies and minds are not separate. They burn with purpose even in pain. Perhaps this is why they have survived everything, not through comfort but through conflict. A few days later, Mason started walking through the ship without help. The Volari crew members stepped aside respectfully when he passed. He often stopped to ask questions about their world, curious about their calm and harmony. They in return asked him about Earth. One young Volari, Lura, asked, "Is it true humans once went to the stars with no fear?" Mason smiled softly. "Oh, we had fear. We just didn't let it stop us." Lura tilted her head. "Why not?" He answered, "Because sometimes being afraid means you're still alive. And if you're alive, there's still a chance to win." That answer spread through the crew like a quiet spark. Even among the Volari who valued peace, Mason's words made them think differently. Perhaps courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was walking forward in spite of it. One evening, Sale joined Mason in the observation room again. The stars shone like diamonds across the black sky. "You have changed the way we see life," she told him. He chuckled. "I didn't mean to." "Sometimes the greatest lessons come from what we don't mean," she said. Then, after a pause, she asked, "When you were on your world, what kept you going when everything was lost?" He was quiet for a while before answering. "People, the ones who stood with me. The ones I promised I'd come back for. When I couldn't move, I thought of them. And somehow I did." Sale listened, writing that sentence into her log later. Humans heal through connection. Their emotions are their medicine. They grow through anger, love, grief, and loyalty. To harm one emotion may be to harm their life itself. As Mason's strength returned, so did his curiosity. He began helping the Volari crew, fixing tools, giving ideas about construction and defense. His hands were rough but skilled. When Sael asked why he was helping, he said, "Because it feels right." "You saved me." "I don't like owing anyone." Sael smiled. "You owe us nothing, Mason." He looked at her seriously. "Then call it gratitude." In the next few days, the crew began calling the new human behavior the spite reflex. They didn't mean it as insult. It was their scientific name for something they could not fully explain. Mason found it amusing. "Spite reflex," he repeated one morning. "That sounds about right. We humans don't like being told we can't do something. That's when we usually do it." By the end of the second week, Mason was completely healed. The last scar on his arm faded as he stood beside Sael, watching another sunrise over Earth from orbit. The light reflected off the glass, bathing them both in gold. Sail said quietly, "Your planet still holds beauty, even after everything." Mason nodded. "Yeah, that's what I love about it. No matter how broken we make it, it still finds a way to shine again." Sail smiled softly. "Just like you." He looked at her, surprised. "Me? Yes," she said. "You and your people. You heal not because of hope, but because of defiance. It is beautiful in a strange way." Mason laughed gently. "Guess we're stubborn like that." Sail's final report that night read, "Humanity may be the only known race whose biology is tied to emotion. Their anger does not destroy them. It rebuilds them. Their pain becomes strength. Their grief becomes reason. If this is true for one man, then perhaps it is true for all humans. The universe should take note. The species that refuses to give up has returned." She looked at Mason one last time before ending her report. He stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Earth slowly turn below. For the first time since his arrival, he smiled, not out of pride, but peace. Yet Sail could tell. Deep inside, the fire that kept him alive still burned quietly, waiting for the next challenge. Would you like me to continue with part 3, 1,000 words next? In the same third person, simple, emotional. The days aboard the Volari ship passed calmly, but Mason Cole could feel that peace never lasted long around him. He was grateful for the kindness of Commander Sail and her crew, yet deep inside he sensed something uneasy, something waiting beyond the quiet stars. The Volari scientists continued studying his recovery, while Mason spent his time learning their language, helping where he could, and walking the long metal halls to keep his mind busy. One morning, alarms echoed softly through the ship. Sail hurried to the command deck as warning lights flashed along the walls. "Unidentified vessels approaching from the outer belt," reported her pilot. On the screen, several dark shapes appeared, moving fast toward them. Sail frowned. "Scavenger raiders," she said. "They attack any ship carrying resources." The Volari were peaceful explorers, not warriors. Their shields were strong, but they lacked the will to fight. Mason watched the radar display as the ships drew closer. "They're not here to talk," he said quietly. Sail turned to him. "We will try to avoid conflict. Fighting is not our way." Mason crossed his arms. "Sometimes you don't get to choose. Sometimes trouble finds you." The ship shook slightly as a blast hit their outer shield. Crew members rushed to their stations, their voices calm but nervous. Mason could see fear in their eyes. To them this was chaos. To him it was familiar. Sail's voice was firm but gentle. "Power to shields. Prepare emergency jump coordinates." The ship trembled again and sparks flew from a nearby panel. Mason stepped forward. "You'll need hands down there," he said, pointing to the maintenance bay. "Let me help," Sail hesitated. "You are not ready for this." He gave her a small grin. "I'm always ready when someone needs help." She wanted to protest, but something in his eyes stopped her. She nodded. "Very well. Do not take unnecessary risks." Mason ran down the corridor toward the lower decks. He could feel the hum of the engines and the tremor of impact through his feet. When he reached the power conduits, 2 Volari engineers were struggling to stabilize the energy flow. Mason jumped in beside them, using his strength to hold a damaged plate while they made repairs. As they worked, another shock wave rolled through the ship. The lights dimmed and one of the engineers lost balance. Mason caught him just in time, steadying the panel with one arm. His muscles strained, but he refused to let go. The alien looked at him, amazed by his endurance. Mason just said, "Keep working. I got it." After a few tense minutes, the power line stabilized. The shield strengthened and the ship stopped shaking. Sail's voice came over the intercom, calm but surprised. Energy levels restored. "The human did it." Mason smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Told you I'd help." Later, when the immediate danger had passed, the crew gathered in the central hall. Many of them looked at Mason with new respect. Sail approached him. "You risk yourself for people you barely know," she said. He replied simply, "That's what you do when someone's in trouble. You don't think, you just act." Sail studied his expression. "Your body heals through emotion, but I think your heart works the same way." He laughed softly. "Maybe. I just don't like seeing anyone hurt." That night, the Volari celebrated their survival with quiet music and warm light. Mason sat with them, trying the alien fruit drink they offered. It was sweet and strange, and for the first time since arriving, he felt part of their world. But Sale noticed something else. Mason's hand, the one he had used to hold the heavy panel, was injured again. The skin had torn slightly, yet as they talked she watched the wound close on its own. It was small, but the process was clear. The more he spoke with passion, the faster it healed. "Mason," she said softly, "you do it again. You heal even while you laugh." He looked at his hand, then shrugged. "Guess my body likes proving people wrong?" Sale smiled faintly. "You call it proving wrong. We call it willpower made flesh." The next day, the Valari Council sent a message to the ship. They had seen the data from Sale's reports about human regeneration and emotional strength. The council wanted to know more, especially about the danger. One elder said through the communicator, "If this is true, then humans are not only survivors. They are forces of resistance. Such power may be dangerous." Sale disagreed. "No, elders. It is not danger, it is endurance. They are strong because they care deeply. That is not a threat. It is a gift." Mason, standing beside her, listened quietly. When the council asked for his view, he answered, "I don't want to be studied like a weapon. I'm just a person who refuses to stay down." The Valari elders exchanged glances. They were not used to such direct honesty. Finally, they agreed to continue observing him under Sale's supervision. In the following days, Mason began helping with daily ship work. He taught the crew small tricks: how to brace a panel with minimal effort, how to use rhythm to keep focus in tense moments. The crew liked his company. They called him the indignant one in their language, a respectful title that meant the one who rises. Sile often joined him in quiet conversation. One evening she asked, "What is it like, Mason, to live with such emotion always burning inside?" He thought for a while. "It's heavy," he said. "Sometimes it feels like carrying fire. It can burn you if you're not careful. But it also keeps you warm when everything else goes cold." Sale looked out the window toward the stars. "Your words, they remind me that life is not about silence. Maybe we, the Valari, have forgotten that." Mason smiled. "Maybe balance is what we both need. You teach peace and we teach persistence." That night, Sale recorded another entry in her log. "The human emotion known as spite is not born from cruelty. It is born from purpose, a refusal to yield. They do not heal because they wish to live. They heal because they cannot accept defeat. Perhaps that is the true strength of their species." Days later, when the ship finally reached calm space again, the crew gathered one last time to thank Mason. He stood quietly as they spoke in their soft voices. One of them, Lura, gave him a small silver band, a symbol of unity among the Valari. "For the one who fights for light," she said. Mason took it gently, humbled. "I don't fight for light," he said softly. "I fight because someone has to hold it when the dark gets too close." Sile watched him proud. She could see now that Mason was not just a survivor. He was a living example of what humanity stood for. Anger, will, compassion, and resilience all mixed into something no science could measure. As the stars drifted past outside, Sale closed her final report for the day. "The human spirit is not about peace or war. It is about choice, to stand again, no matter the fall. To grow new flesh, not from hope, but from the refusal to surrender. We have seen it with our own eyes, and it is both terrifying and beautiful." Mason looked out the window, the silver band glinting softly on his wrist. The stars were endless, but he didn't feel small anymore. For the first time since Earth had fallen silent, he felt that maybe humanity still had a place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, but as reminders that even broken things can rise again. Commander Sale sat in her quiet office, surrounded by the soft glow of blue data screens. Every report about Mason Cole had turned into a mystery. The more she studied him, the more questions she found. He was now completely healed, strong, alert, and always ready to help, but what truly amazed her was his spirit. He didn't just survive. He changed the mood of the whole ship. Before Mason's arrival, the Valari crew had lived in calm order. They worked quietly, spoke softly, and never argued. But now, laughter often echoed through the halls. Crew members worked faster, more confidently, and spoke about bravery, something the Valari rarely discussed. Mason's energy had spread like light through glass. That morning, Sale called a meeting with her science team. "We have collected enough data," she began, "but we still do not understand the real source of this human strength. We have measured his blood, his cells, his emotions, yet none of it explains why he can recover beyond limits. Talon, the chief medic, looked thoughtful. Maybe the answer isn't in his body, Commander, he said. Maybe it's in his mind, or something deeper. Sale nodded slowly. You may be right. I believe Mason's strength comes from belief, not biology. It is his refusal to give up that tells his body what to do. At that same moment, Mason stood in the training hall helping two young Valari officers learn basic defense techniques. You don't need to be strong to stand tall, he said, smiling. You just need to decide not to back down. One of the officers laughed softly. But isn't that dangerous? Mason shook his head. No, it's called courage. Sometimes courage is the only thing between giving up and moving forward. Sale watched from the doorway. She could see how naturally he inspired others. He didn't lecture or demand. He simply lived what he believed. Later that evening, Sale and Mason sat together in the observatory. Stars shimmered outside the glass dome. The galaxy stretched endlessly around them, a silent sea of light. Sale spoke first. You have changed my people more than you know. They talk about strength now. They believe they can endure hardship. Before you came, the Valari avoided all struggle. We thought peace meant avoiding pain, but now I think peace means facing it, and still standing. Mason smiled quietly. Pain's not the enemy, he said. Giving up is. Sale looked down at her hands. We used to think that emotions made us weak, but watching you, it feels different. You carry your emotions like a torch, not a burden. Mason nodded slowly. Where I'm from, emotions remind us we're alive. They hurt sometimes, but they also give us reason. When I lost everything, anger was the only thing that told me I still cared. Sale listened in silence. She realized his words weren't about destruction. They were about endurance. His anger wasn't hate. It was love twisted into strength. That night, she made a personal recording. The human emotion called anger may not be what we thought. In them, it is not cruelty. It is memory, pain, and care fused into energy. It drives their survival and protects what they love. To understand humans, we must see that their defiance is born from devotion. A few days later, a message arrived from the Valari High Council. They requested Sael to present her findings in person. The council had mixed feelings. Some saw Mason as a symbol of hope. Others feared what humanity represented, a race that grew stronger through suffering. Sale told Mason about the summons. They want to question you too, she said carefully. Mason raised an eyebrow. Question me? I'm not sure they'll like what they hear. They need to see what you are, she replied. Not a threat, a lesson. When they reached the Valari capital ship, it was a massive structure floating near a white sun, glowing with crystal towers. Mason looked around amazed. You built all this without war? He asked. Yes, Sale said. We built through unity. But now I wonder if that unity came from fear of conflict rather than true strength. The council chamber was filled with tall figures in long robes. Their faces were calm but cautious. When Mason entered, all eyes turned to him. The head elder spoke first. Human Mason Cole, we have read the reports. You recovered from wounds that should have ended you. We must understand how. Mason took a slow breath. You want the truth? It's simple. I didn't want to quit. I didn't want the people who cared about me to think I gave up. Maybe my body just listened to that. The elder frowned. So your power comes from emotion? From anger? From anger, yes, Mason said. But not the kind that destroys. The kind that says, you can't stop me. It's not about hate. It's about not letting pain win. The room was silent. The Valari whispered among themselves. One counselor asked, do all humans share this nature? Mason thought for a moment. Every human I've known has it in some way. Some hide it, some burn bright with it. But deep down we all carry that spark. The one that refuses to die. After a long silence, Sile stepped forward. Elders, I have seen his truth. He brings no danger. Humanity is not a violent species by nature. They are survivors. Their defiance is their way of protecting what they love. The head elder looked thoughtful. And yet such a trait could make them unstoppable. Mason smiled faintly. Maybe, but unstoppable doesn't mean unkind. We can fight without hate. We can get angry without destroying. That's what makes us, us. The council dismissed them for deliberation. Hours later, they called Sale back. We will not see the humans as a threat, the head elder said, but we will watch them closely. Their potential is great, and so is their danger if misunderstood. When Sale told Mason the result, he only shrugged. Fair enough. I'd probably watch us too. They both laughed quietly. It was a small sound, but it carried relief. On the flight back to their ship, Sale looked at him with gentle curiosity. You don't seem angry about how they judged you. Mason smiled. Anger doesn't mean shouting or fighting. Sometimes it just means not letting things change who you are. They can fear me if they want, but I know what I stand for. She nodded. And what is that? He looked out the window at the endless stars. I stand for the idea that no matter how much the universe pushes, we push back. Not because we hate it, but because we're not done yet. Sile smiled softly. You sound like the stories our elders told us long ago, about beings who walked through fire and came out brighter. Maybe those were humans, Mason said quietly. When they returned, the Valari crew greeted them warmly. The younger officers cheered Mason's return. They had all heard how he faced the High Council with calm strength. To them, he wasn't just a guest anymore. He was a symbol. That night, as the ship drifted near a quiet nebula, Sale wrote her next report. The human race is not defined by peace or conflict. They are defined by will. Pain becomes their teacher and defiance their language. They rise not in comfort, but in challenge. The more they are pushed, the stronger they become. Perhaps they are the universe's reminder that strength and kindness can live in the same heart. When she looked up, Mason was outside the glass, sitting quietly near the window, watching the stars. His reflection looked calm, yet the faint fire behind his eyes reminded her. This man was living proof that humanity's greatest weapon was not destruction, but resilience. The stars outside the Valari ship looked endless, like silver dust spread across the dark ocean of space. Mason Cole stood near the window, his reflection glowing softly in the glass. Months had passed since his rescue, but the event still felt unreal. He had come from a world that nearly destroyed itself, yet here he was, among beings who had never known anger or war. And somehow his stubborn spirit had changed them forever. Commander Sayal entered the room quietly. Her steps made no sound on the polished floor. She carried a small crystal tablet in her hands. The Council has approved the final report, she said. They will share it with the rest of the Galactic Union. Mason turned, half curious. So the whole galaxy's about to learn that humans get stronger when they're mad? Sale smiled softly. Yes, though I used gentler words. I said humans heal through emotion and endure through will. He chuckled. That sounds a lot nicer than what I'd say. Sayal joined him by the window. You should be proud, Mason. Your strength gave the galaxy something new to understand. He looked back at the stars. I'm not sure I wanted to be understood. I just didn't want to quit. Sayal's eyes softened. That is exactly why they will remember you. The following day, the Valari ship received countless transmissions. Messages came from faraway planets, some curious, some doubtful, and a few filled with wonder. Different species wanted to know more about humans. They wanted to see this being who healed not through calm but through courage. In the communication hall, holograms of alien ambassadors appeared, their voices echoing across the chamber. Is it true, one asked, that humans can grow stronger from suffering? Mason stood beside Sale, speaking simply. We don't want to suffer. Nobody does. But when we do, we try to make something out of it. Maybe that's our way of saying we're not finished yet. Another voice asked, and does this anger not harm you? Mason thought for a moment. Sometimes it does, but we learn to carry it. The trick isn't to avoid anger, it's to use it without letting it use you. The ambassadors were silent for a while. They had never heard anyone speak of emotion as a tool of healing. Finally, one of them said, perhaps humans are proof that strength can come from imperfection. Sale smiled. Yes, they remind us that even broken things can rebuild. After the transmissions ended, Mason walked through the corridors. He passed Valari workers who now greeted him warmly. Some wore small armbands shaped like human scars, a symbol of endurance that had quietly become popular among them. Wherever he went, he saw the effect of his presence. The once calm Valari now moved with quiet determination. They had learned to face difficulty without fear. He entered the ship's garden, a glowing room filled with alien plants that shimmered like glass leaves. He sat on a bench and watched the faint light dance across the ceiling. Sale found him there later, sitting silently. You don't seem happy, she said gently. Mason smiled faintly. I'm just thinking. Back home, people used to say that when something's hard, it means it's worth doing. But I wonder if we ever learned what that really meant. Sale sat beside him. Perhaps it means not to give up even when the path hurts. He nodded. Maybe. It's strange, your people helped me heal, but it was my anger that kept me alive. I used to think that made me wrong somehow. But now I see, maybe it just makes me human. Sale placed her hand over the small silver band he wore, the one the Valari had given him. You gave us more than knowledge. You gave us courage. You showed us that peace without purpose is only silence. He looked at her kindly. And you showed me that peace doesn't have to mean weakness. It can be strength that doesn't shout. They sat together quietly as soft lights drifted through the garden, glowing like tiny stars. Weeks later, the Valari report spread across the galaxy. It was titled On the Human Condition, Defiance as Healing. It described how human emotion worked like a living engine, turning pain into power and fear into resilience. The words reached every known world. Some species were amazed, others were frightened. One scholar from the Andari system wrote, "If anger can heal, then humanity may be the universe's most dangerous miracle." Another said, "Perhaps the universe made humans not to rule, but to remind us that even despair has light hidden inside it." Mason didn't care much for fame. He spent his days helping the crew, teaching them small lessons about problem-solving and bravery. Sometimes he fixed broken tools. Other times he told stories of his planet, stories of families rebuilding cities, of children planting trees where bombs once fell. The Valari listened to him with quiet wonder. To them, humans were now symbols of endurance. One evening, a message arrived from a far colony asking for help. A nearby settlement had suffered a solar flare and lost communication. Sale prepared a rescue mission. "It's dangerous," she said, "but we can reach them before they freeze." Mason smiled. "Then what are we waiting for?" The journey was long and cold. When they reached the colony, they found damaged shelters and frightened colonists. Mason stepped out first, leading the rescue team. He worked side by side with the Valari, carrying supplies, repairing heaters, and comforting survivors. When a young alien child asked him, "Why are you helping us?" "You don't even know us," Mason knelt down and smiled. "Because someone helped me once when I didn't deserve it. That's how we keep the light going." Sale watched the scene quietly. She realized then that Mason's defiance wasn't only about survival. It was also about kindness that refused to die. When they finally returned to the ship, exhausted but safe, Sale wrote her final report. Humans are not born to dominate. They are born to endure, to adapt, and to protect. Their greatest power is not strength of body, but strength of spirit. Pain teaches them. Love guides them. Anger fuels them. And hope makes them unstoppable. Mason read the report later and laughed softly. "That makes us sound a lot better than we really are." Sale smiled. "Maybe not better, just truer." He looked out the window again, watching the stars drift by. "You know, Commander, maybe that's what we're all trying to do. We all break in our own ways. Humans, Valari, everyone. But we fix ourselves not because it's easy, but because something inside us refuses to stay broken." Sale nodded. "That's something. Perhaps it is the soul." "Maybe," Mason said quietly. "Or maybe it's just stubbornness." They both laughed softly. The Valari ship continued its journey through the galaxy. On many worlds, Mason Cole's story spread as legend. The human who healed through willpower, who turned anger into strength, and who taught peace to a race that had forgotten how to struggle. In the final log of the expedition, Sale's voice spoke over a calm background of stars. "We came to study humanity and found something far greater. They are proof that the universe creates balance. Where peace forgets courage, humans remind it. Where despair grows, they plant hope. You may wound them, but you cannot make them yield. They do not heal because the pain is gone. They heal because they refuse to let it win." And as the ship sailed onward, Mason stood at the window once more. His eyes were calm, his reflection strong. The scars were gone, but the fire in him remained. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We're still here, and that's enough." The stars stretched forever, but for the first time in a long while, Mason didn't feel small beneath them. He felt human, and that was stronger than anything else in the galaxy.